we'll dive into some stories from your own entrepreneurial experience and share with us some of the things that you would consider failures along that journey, and definitely reveal to us, what you learned from it and how you applied that moving forward.
Well, our first product that we launched is Scopings, and obviously, since we're not still working on it actively, it's not a roaring success. And what it was it was sort of like a job network for people who already have jobs. So it was a way for people who are currently employed to find out about the opportunities that were sort of just right for them, and not inundated with hundreds of job postings, right? There's going to be, one or two that popped up, once a month, once every 3 months, even 6 months, you'd get, one email from us, which makes a lot of sense, right? You should know about these things, and you only want to know about the very few that are just right for you. So the idea was that, we'd basically learn about your preferences and your skills over time, and you'd slowly get to a really small scope that was just the right match, and you get only the good stuff, and everything else would just sort of go away. And it could follow you over the length of your career, right? As things change, and we learn more about you, and depending on where you are, you'd still be learning about these opportunities. So I think that's something common for a lot of sort of young entrepreneurs or to work on, right? It's a sort of a really big broken industry, the recruiting industry. So, I mean, you see tons of these guys launching, every day or so with sort of a new twist on it, or, their own sort of angle on how to improve it. And it needs to be improved. But we were about a year into it, and we hadn't really launched, right? Which is a problem. We had a really rich feature complete product, which is good, but I guess the biggest thing we learned there was that you need to launch as soon as possible. Now, you don't want to send something out that's totally half baked, right? It still has to be solid and something that people think is good. I think the mantra of launch, like right away, is good to an extent, right? I think it does a disservice to some people where they think, oh, I'll just put out a total piece of crap, and then people will tell me what's bad about it, and I'll approve and iterate. That's not entirely true, right? I mean, you have to start out with something that people will think is half decent, and then they'll feel like it's worth their time to actually give you some input on. So it has to be half decent, but you definitely need to get it out there. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways I have from that. Get it out there, get people using it, get real feedback, and then iterate. For Flip 2, we actually landed a client before the entire product was fully baked. So all of our clients actually pay, right? There's no freebies here, so everyone pays a monthly subscription. And we had an idea, we built some concepts, we tested it out in sort of a different vertical, and then we reached out to some folks in the travel and hospitality industry, specifically hotels, and we landed probably within the first three weeks a paying client, and then from there we actually built out the rest of the product and improved upon it and iterated, and we're landing clients along the way as we were building it. Again, don't make your idea into brain crack, right? I mean, don't get so absorbed with crafting the most perfect idea in your head. Get it out there, because there's always going to be some problems with it. There's going to be issues. There's going to be things that you haven't realized just totally suck about it. And you only realize that when people tell you, right? And you also don't realize what's the best part of your product. I mean, it's funny. I mean, sometimes you'll get feedback where you never thought that a certain feature that you build would become sort of the main focus of everyone's attention. But once it does, I mean, then you sort of you say, okay, let's shift focus. Let's focus entirely on that and build what people like, what people want, and what people are willing to pay for. That's the most important, right? Build stuff that people will pay for and that they want.
Yeah. So so what happened? You said you kind of went a year with Scopings and still haven't launched. Did you launch at some point?
Yeah, I mean, we launched, and it was slow going. I mean, part of it was that it was in an industry that we didn't have deep domain expertise, right? I mean, we weren't recruiters, we weren't HR people, and part of it was too was that it was a tough industry to be in. I mean, I think if you were to start a sort of any sort of job search or anything recruiting related, you'd find that you know a lot of people want better solutions, but at the same time, a lot of these internal recruiters don't really want you to improve their jobs, and that's something you don't realize until you go out there and start talking to people. So, for example, I mean, there's internal recruiters where they don't want more clarity into the recruiting process. They don't want you to know how many candidates they look at, or how many they reject, or what all the interactions are, or how much time they spend, or what their percentage of successful hires are.
Huh.
And that's not obvious, right? I mean, when you start thinking about building a product, I mean, you think everyone wants something better, right? That saves them time,
Yeah.
and but that's not always true. And so, I mean, if you have you know these key people, right? These people who have to really like your product, and be on board with it for your product to succeed, and they may be somewhat resistant to using that product. I mean, it's going to be a tough sell, right? I mean, their bosses are always going to be like, "This is great. We all want this. I mean, sign us up." But then the people who are going to be using it are like, "Well, you know what? I don't really want this sort of like analytics into what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
That doesn't really work for me." Um, so, I mean, that's something that you learn. I mean, that's something where you talk to people and you sort of find out these things.
Yeah.
The other thing too was um, that type of product is sort of at a cost center, right? I mean, you're selling it to a cost center, right? They don't make money for the company directly, and that's tougher. I mean, you're always looking at budgets, annual budgets. I mean, there's always budgets, right? There's always budget concerns, but when there's cost centers, they usually only get cut, right? I mean, so
Yeah.
if you're selling something to like human resources, for example, I mean, that's a tougher sell because it has to come out from somewhere else. Where Flip Two is on the revenue side of things, right? So we're giving you a product that actually helps you make money, and those are more fun products to work on
Yeah.
because they want you, right? I mean, they're willing to pay for it, and you're helping them grow, as opposed to simply extracting money from them. You're giving them a service that they pay for, but in turn, they're actually going to make more off of your product than they're actually paying you.
Yeah.
And going forward, I'm definitely going to stick with the revenue side of things for products. They're way easier to talk about. There's a lot more people willing to talk to you, and people are just a lot more interested. Right? It's just a more fun conversation, like what we can do to help you, as opposed to give us more of your budget and we'll save you time.
Yeah. So, did you feel like if during that year when y'all were developing the product, I mean, I guess you talk about it like you kind of developing that product. That during that year, were you really kind of hush hush about it, not really, beating the scene about it, and you working up the hype and everything like that, talking to people, getting the feedback? Were you doing that or not?
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty stealth. I mean, and that was a
Yeah.
mistake. We were really hush hush. I mean, we thought we were building like the most incredible thing, which maybe it was. I
Yeah.
mean, and I guess you could say it could be. I mean, I think it's really good,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, I mean, we didn't get it out there, right? I mean, it doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what we think, right? I mean, you need to get it out there and see what people, how they react, and let them tell you, okay, this is why I'm going to buy your product, this feature alone, and then from there, you sort of build out, right? So as opposed to building a really huge feature complete product, build something that is going to attract people who are willing to pay for it, and then whatever those features are, continue to build upon them, and then go out and then figure out what you should build next.
Yeah.
And that was definitely something that was a mistake.
This is a great example because I think a lot. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially on their first go at things, really run into this. Especially that kind of mindset that you need to keep it a secret almost because you're working on something awesome. And a lot of times we are, it is an awesome concept and everything, But it's a huge learning, uh, gap even just to bridge that mental chasm from, oh, it is okay to tell people about this because obviously eventually they're going to have to know anyways,
Yeah.
and to be truthful. I mean, there's so few other people out there that are ready and willing to steal just some, you know, whatever, one or two people, a handful of people just going out there and trying to make something happen. Nobody's going to come in and just swoop and steal their idea
Yeah.
and necessarily going to be able to move any faster than they're going to be able to move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's something I think you're absolutely right where, you really need to internalize that. I mean, you can tell, I mean, there's some lessons where, you can read VC blogs, you can read entrepreneur blogs, you can read all this stuff, and you sort of like, okay, that's common sense, right? You're like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
But there's some things where, you really have to internalize them, which is the point you're making where, no one's going to steal your idea. I mean, generally speaking, I mean, if you can't execute faster than whoever's stealing your idea anyway, you're probably not going to succeed, right? I mean, you need to have, the capability to pull this thing off. And you're right. I mean, no one's out there looking to steal ideas and then spend a whole lot of time, trying to prove them out. Granted, there are some, really, really good ideas out there, and people will jump on them and try to copy them. But like I said, I mean, if someone's copying your idea, you're probably in a good place, right? And it's still going to be up to you to execute because even if you do start to succeed, right, and you start taking off, then people are going to come after you. I mean, you can look at anything, right? I mean, you could look at the most recent example of Groupon, right? I mean, how many deal sites are there now? How many daily deals are there? There's an infinite number of them, right? You have some success, they're going to come after you anyway. So, I mean, I wouldn't worry about, people stealing your idea. In fact, it probably works the other way. I think if you get your idea out there and you start talking about it, you may actually get people, sort of, they may push back, right? They may think, well, you know what, these guys are going after it. I sort of like their angle. Maybe it's too tough of competition for me. Maybe I shouldn't jump in and try building this. Let me think of something else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, definitely I wouldn't be scared off about, getting your idea out there.
No, you can't be because it really just comes down to, I mean, with these specific examples, it has a lot to do with just fear of competition almost. At least that's how I kind of view it as a fear of competition. But you're always going to get to a point where you do encounter competition.
Yeah, I mean, as a startup, you don't have competition. I mean, let's be realistic. I mean, if you're, a couple of people, you have zero competition. I mean, there's not, a single company that cares about you.
Yeah.
They just don't. I mean, so, I mean, your only competition is yourselves, right? I mean, you need to execute. You need to pull this idea off. I mean, and if you do that, you'll succeed. I mean, but no one's gonna crush you while you're a three-man shop. I mean, you're cockroaches, right? I mean, no one can crush you guys. I mean, you're too little.
So take advantage of that definitely, and just get out there and just pound the pavement with whatever idea you have, and get as many people. Because you're always, when you do that, you're going to get people that are excited and follow you, and those are going to turn into the people that support you as you start actually bringing in revenue. So that's